This show has been brought to you by the Thomas Allen Collection. The Thomas Allen Collection is a men's accessory line designed to attract and capture a variety of tastes with a unique appeal. Thomas Allen strives to produce an extraordinary design to turn a new leaf on fashion for men and their desired occasions. If I told you once, I told you several times on this podcast that ladies, get your men a Thomas Allen Collection tie. They'll love it. Gentlemen, get you a Thomas Allen Collection tie. You can't go wrong with rocking a Thomas Allen Collection tie at a formal event. I'll be rocking one in an upcoming at the CBC events. BG, don't you own a Thomas Allen Collection tie?
Yes, sir. And they way fly than anything that's already out there. I got a couple of them, so I recommend going out there and getting some of that flavor.
Yep, Thomas Allen Collection. You can reach him at 678-960-9171, 678-960-9171. Thomas Allen, when tying a knot really counts. Now on to the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, a classic.
Bismillah. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gon' come. Yeah, I chose the path chose me. This is Lord's plan, divine decree. Natural high, window sheet, up a parallel view, let the ghetto sheet. BK, NOLA, OMF, GLD, Amazing Grace.
Welcome to the FREELUNCH podcast, home of the New South Movement and the New South Movement Network. This is your boy Tight, one half of the FREELUNCH podcast duo, and I have the main man, the man of the hour, the one that everybody is always asking about. BG, what's happening?
Chill. BG, 27 Kid in the place to be. Where you get that intro from, though? Who asking about the boy?
Well, they all ask about you. They look for, based on your daily profession, they ask about reaching out to you for advice. They ask about you when they see pictures of you on the IG. So people always asking about you.
So that's what this is about. Okay, well, it's always good to be asked about, I guess. I ain't gonna complain.
Nah, you shouldn't complain. So we got another opportunity to bless the mic. This is the official Underground Southern Movement. I almost feel like we should rename it to the Underground because
we the Underground. But based on what we seen this past weekend, we is definitely the Underground.
We are definitely the Underground. So what we wanted to do is really use this opportunity to talk about this past weekend. But BG, I got a story for you that you even missed pertaining to the CBC. So even before I jump into that, just wanted to let the folks know that BG and I had an opportunity to participate as media in the 45th annual legislation caucus put on by the Congressional Black Caucus here in the Washington, D.C. area. This has been going on for 45 years. Essentially, I'll allow BG, since this was his first time attending. So, BG, if you can kind of give the people some background as to what the CBC is and what you experienced, and then I want to tell you a story that you kind of missed Saturday morning.
Cool. And before I get into it, man, I just gonna say that this podcast trap is giving us some exceptional opportunities to do a lot of different things. You know, it's got us going places that we never could have imagined that we would be going, and meeting people that we never imagined that we would have the opportunity to meet. It's really been something good for us, and it's been life-changing to be able to do this. But about this weekend, we had the opportunity to go and see what the Congressional Black Caucus Annual Legislative Conference is about. And from what I could tell, it's a opportunity for the public to interact with their politicians on the state, national, and I guess even a city level, to hear and see what the agenda items are as it relates to issues in the community. So they had different sessions about police violence. They had topics on health, They had a session on hip hop and politics and all those type of things. So for me, I just saw it as an opportunity for the public to get an idea of what our legislators are doing and the policies that they're pushing on our behalf. It's also very noteworthy. You see a lot of different famous figures. We saw everybody from Al Sharpton to David Banner to Martin Luther King III.
So like BG said, this is something that essentially starts on a Wednesday, and it'll kind of ramp down on a Sunday. BG and I were able to participate in Thursday, Friday, and sessions, and then I also participated in a Saturday session that we'll kind of talk about throughout the podcast. I participated over the last 5 years I've been in the city, so I've been able to experience a lot of what BG is referring to. So I always enjoy hearing that firsthand experience and what others think. But BG, you didn't get a chance to participate in the prayer breakfast. But that was an interesting experience, and it's a story I have to tell for the podcast. So
what happened at the prayer breakfast?
Prayer breakfast was scheduled to start at 7:30 and at 10 p.m. And actually, you would have enjoyed it because your congresswoman from Selma, Alabama, the Montgomery area, etc., she was one of the co-chairs. What is it, Terry
Sewell?
Have you ever met her before?
I have, and I have one of the guys that went to school with me. I didn't think about this, but he's actually one of her staffers or interns or something like that. So I didn't think about it until later. So
she was one of the co-chairs with Jeffers from the New York Harlem area, I believe. And so as them being part of the program, just to provide perspective. So prayer breakfast, it's essentially that they have. Vashawn Mitchell and Byron Wilson or something like that. They were kind of some of the entertainment. Otis Moss III from Chicago was the keynote speaker, and he had him in there hooting and hollering, and it was a really good message. It's one that was very, very, very entertaining. Miles College was actually the choir that participated. They kind of sung at the beginning of the prayer breakfast, and then at the end when everybody was leaving. But here's the funny story. So we get there at 7:30, not knowing that Vice President Joe Biden would be in attendance.
Right.
So you know what that means.
What that means?
That means that the security is on high alert, and that you have to go through these metal detectors, and it's just... in the past, and for people that have attended in the past, you essentially, when you get to the prayer breakfast, you just walk in. You show them your ticket and you walk in. They just got all the doors open. It's not really a line. So when we first got there, I was kind of on alert as to trying to understand why there were lines. So we get through the first barrier to actually get into the line to go through the metal detectors, and that's when we found out that Vice President Joe Biden was in attendance. We standing in line, BG, and everybody had, unless you are a member of Congress, you have to go through the metal detectors. If you are not a member of Congress, then they had basically you could just walk through and you're a member of Congress. So we're standing in line. And lo and behold, here comes the Honorable Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Okay.
So he finally makes it through the first barrier of, they had a rope that was only allowing so many people to go through to even get in line for the metal detector. So he finally gets through the line, and I turn around and I look back and I say, uh-oh. I said, there go Reverend Jackson. He got to stand in line like all of us. And the first thing came in my head was he's not finna stand in line. He is not finna stand in line.
Uh-huh.
So I'm up at the front. I'm basically at the front of the line about to get ready to go. I'm about 2 people in front of me. I look up. Reverend Jesse Jackson has skipped everybody in line, found himself in standing side by side by me, and extends his hand to shake my hand to acknowledge who he was, and proceeds to essentially get in front of me.
He snuck it.
So I know exactly what's going on and what's happening.
Oh, hell. What you say?
Nothing. I can't tell the Reverend that he can't get in front of me. What would you have done? You can't tell the Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Hey,
how you doing? You skipping?
You supposed to hold on to his hand and look at me in his eye and say, "What you doing?" That's normally what you do. You squeeze that hand, look at him, and say, "Hey, man, what you doing? I've been standing in this line."
I could.
He got you.
He got me.
The mystique got you.
I knew. Can I tell the Honorable Reverend Jesse Jackson not to skip, that he can't skip me?
Somebody got to do it, man. Somebody have to stop this madness.
Would you have done it? Would you have told the Reverend, him and his two, I guess these were his two security guys, ended up getting in front of me and skipping me. So what would you have done? And I asked the audience member the same question.
What would they have done?
Would you have allowed the Honorable Jesse Jackson not to skip you in line going through the metal detectors at the prayer breakfast?
I ain't gonna lie, the mystique would have got me too. Go right ahead, Ralph.
I knew it was gonna happen. And he just sort of gave me that look, and I just shook his hand and said, "How you doing, sir?" He's like, doing fine.
Can I get this picture with you though?
Well, I already have.
You need that?
I already have one with the Reverend Jesse Jackson. I have one. So.
Oh, okay.
The only other thing I could have done was I should have gave him a FREELUNCH podcast business card and asked him to be on the show.
Yeah, that would have been good. But once again, that
caught me
mystique
off
took
guard.
over.
Yeah, it caught me off guard. So I thought that was one of the more entertaining kind of events of the weekend. But let's actually get into what you and I were able to kind of experience. So I kind of want to go back to Thursday, which is a day that you arrived, and we kind of were able to attend a reform session on police reform and some of the high-profile candidates on the panel for that particular conversation. Kind of wanted to touch on each one of those as an agenda item, touch on each one of the panels that we attended, but really talk about what our thoughts were on the Congressional Caucus. So we first attended that police reform session, and we may have even attended one before that one as a stand-in.
Yeah, and we were moving around because if you remember, it was so many different sessions going on in different conference rooms, at the same time. So you would go into one and hang there for a few minutes and move around. So I think the first one we actually walked in was the one that was talking about bridging the gap from Selma to the present, because one of the actual founders of Black Lives Matter was on that panel.
Right.
So we were only there for a short period of time, and then we migrated to the one on the police and policy as it relates to the police.
That's the one where we had a number of the Lord. Ben Crump was on that. Ben Crump. The guy that represented Walter Scott was on that panel. So that one was really made up on a lot of lawyers and those folks.
It was high profile with those attorneys up there. And the period of time that we were in there, the conversation was focused around implementation of body cameras. And one of the congressmen is putting forward a bill to where they're going to try to obtain $100 million. And with that $100 million, it's basically going to be assuring that police departments across the country have the funds that they need to acquire body cameras for each and every one of their officers. And we know that that's kind of been on the forefront of how we address all of these incidents with police using excessive force. So there was a lot of discussion around that, weighing the pros and the cons. While we know that the cameras will be good, and there has been a lot that cameras have captured that have somewhat made a difference in public opinion, on the flip side of that, the cameras, as we know, are not the end all. Like, even if they do have the cameras, will there be anything in place that assures that a police officer will have that camera on? how it will be processed as evidence in these cases. So for me, it was interesting to see the dialogue coming from the congressman who's going to be putting forth this particular bill, and then hearing all these
Emmanuel Cleaver II.
Emmanuel Cleaver II, and then having these people who deal with the law all the time debate back and forth on what's good about it, what's bad about the police cameras, and then like what other things need to be in place in addition to those cameras from a policy perspective.
It was good information. Attendees included Roland Martin walked in and attended it for a second, but for me the highlight was the recognition and the opportunity to speak with Brother Fred Gray from out of Tuskegee, who was actually in town as a recipient of one of the awards at the Phoenix Award, which is kind of the big deal here during the Congressional Black Caucus.
One of the legendary civil rights attorneys that actually was active in this area in Alabama, Tuskegee, Montgomery, and Selma. He actually was one of the attorneys, a part of the team that represented Rosa Parks. And so, with that, he had a lot of connections to some of the more well-known civil rights participants and leaders. And so he fought a lot of cases during that period of time. And he's still basically doing the same thing. He's still practicing. He still has a well-renowned law firm out of Tuskegee, Alabama. And he actually is one of our fraternity brothers. So we didn't go in there with any plans, but he just happened to walk in on the same session. And we left out at the same time, and we had an opportunity to kind of talk to him. And I asked him a question about when he was fighting those cases in the 50s and the 60s, what was it about him and the others who were out there on their front line? What was it going on in their minds that gave them, I guess, the courage and the confidence to step out and stand on what was right in the face of possibly getting killed, and having that target on your back by the supremacist groups that didn't want that type of activity going on. And he just really broke it down to us on the level. It's like, it basically had gotten to a boiling point. They were tired of not being able to access restrooms and restaurants and public transportation the same way that white folks were. That was kind of their focus, going into law to be able to understand the law and then come back and fight some of the segregation and Jim Crow laws of the 50s and the 60s. And that was at the beginning of our time at the convention, so that made me feel real good about what we was going to experience.
One thing that stood out for me during that interaction, like you mentioned, we did we left. We kind of exited the panel discussion when the Honorable Fred Gray was heading out as well, and we were able to escort him because of with those convention centers being so large and hard to kind of maneuver and navigate around. We kind of escorted him to his next destination. But the thing that stood out to me, and kind of one of the things I'm gonna bring back up as we talk about this podcast, was how humble and how willing he was to kind of just converse and talk with us. He wasn't arrogant, or for all the work he's done on the civil rights front, he very well could have had the personality, or he could have very well had the cockiness or ego or arrogance that one would think someone would have, but he definitely didn't have that persona. So that's something I wanted to point out, just in general, as to meeting Brother Fred Gray.
We also asked him about, with him being in that role at that moment in time, how was he seeing what was going on in his present time? I guess because I'm always curious about those people that fought, that took took beatings and got arrested, and to look at what's currently going on, especially in the black community. How does that make them feel? And his statement was that a lot of things have changed, of course, but a lot of things are still the same. But one of the things that he did say was that it was going to come down to the people of this generation, people in that age, those late 20s and the 30s, to start standing up and representing the community and fighting some of these injustices that are going on. So that really laid out that there's work for us to now start doing as it relates to these things that we're facing.
So that was essentially Thursday's event. And then on Friday, you and I were kind of able to attend two very popular sessions. One of them was the Hip Hop Caucus. That was the second one, which was moderated by Roland Martin. But before that, there was a session on, what's the name of it, BG? Do you have it in front of you?
It was Blacks in Media.
Black Voices in Media. Black Voices in Media was the second one. And that one is the one that that was actually put on by the Young Fellows. So that's the Congressional Black Caucus has a fellows program, and each year the fellows put on a session. And some of the folks that were on that session was David Banner, Mark Lamont, Hill,
Angela Rye.
Yeah, we had a nice panel of individuals that were on that first panel. We stayed in there for about an hour before going to the Hip Hop Caucus.
And I think that was probably the most high-profile group of panelists assembled. And one of the neat things about that one is that everybody was in our peer group. You're looking at people that are 30, mid-30s or so, talking about the Black Voices in Media, confirming everything that we have kind of talked about in previous episodes about how there is no real perspective coming from the Black community in our media, whether it be print media, television, radio, and how that affects the community. We don't really have a true way of reflecting information that's important to our community and getting it out on a broad scale, nor do we have a reinforcement of positive images for our community versus what you have in the white community and now even in the Latin community with Telemundo. There is a need for the major media streams to be respectful and to acknowledge that there is a Black community that watches these shows and listens to these shows on the radio, and that they need to have more direct representation of what's going on in the community. And there's also emphasis, of course, on more Black-owned media entities to reflect our message directly. And where we are with what we're doing now, we need to continue doing it and continue to grow it out so that we can use it to get information to our people.
I would agree 100%. That particular panel was interesting to me because there was a lot of young people in that session. David Banner, of course, had some good things to say where he spoke about understanding, knowing your history and knowing that you as African Americans are supreme beings and kind of having that perspective and not allowing white privileged or other things to kind of identify who you are as an individual. So I thought that was interesting. But to your point, there definitely was a lot of conversation around having Black voices in the media, not only on the TV ones or the Aspires, but also having those on the CNNs, because if you all remember, there wasn't a lot of Black presence on either the CNN or the Fox coverage of the debate, and that type of lack of representation also confirms the lack of exposure that the Black agenda is going to get during those debates. So I thought that, they were in a lot of ways confirming and affirming what you and I kind of speak about on previous podcasts.
And they talked about how social media is an effective way to communicate information quickly and to a large number of people, and how that is another way for us to get news and information and to have this type of dialogue to push change without it being affected by somebody from Fox News, from somebody from MSNBC. It's unfiltered, it's uncut, and it's a way that personally is where I get all my information from now. I get more information from Black Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, to a larger degree than what I get on just sitting there and watching the 10 o'clock news.
We ended that session and went to the Hip Hop Caucus. let's just jump right into the Hip Hop Caucus. That was led by Roland Martin, with a panel that some of you may or may not know. The most notable name for me was Yearwood,
Reverend Yearwood, who was very instrumental in those hip hop related voting movements.
Yeah, Vote or Die have a lot with helping a lot of hip hop artists like Queen Latifah, Puff Daddy, Uncle, Russell Simmons, and T.I. Some of the notable names that he's helped with kind of marrying hip hop and politics and the whole voting rights kind of initiative.
Then there was Linda Sarsour, and she is from the Justice League in New York. I have seen her a few times on different things, and basically the Justice League is an organization that sets out to help young people who might be in some form or another affected by the judicial system, and making sure that they understand the political process, make sure that they have everything that they need to really exercise their full rights as Americans. And who else was on that?
Andre Carson was
Congressman
Andre Carson was kind of the person that was hosting it and putting it on. There was one other lady who I can't remember her name that kind of gave the whole story about the Flavor Flav. You remember her?
Yeah, I can't remember who that was.
Well, that was essentially the panel, and then there was the guy that left early too, that sat by Dr. Bryant. Baraka.
That was the largest session that we were in, because everybody wanted to hear what is going to be the hip hop community's response, and how will hip hop push some of the political agendas and policies forward that are much needed in black and brown communities across the country. One of the things that was highlighted is the disconnect between the older generation and the young people, and how it's going to be important for that gap to be closed, to where the young people's energy and their aggressiveness has to be gel together with the older people's wisdom and instruction. And in order for us to be able to move forward, we got to be able to have these conversations. As we lead up to 10/10, Minister Louis Farrakhan has been collaborating and having discussions with many of the different hip-hop artists and people in that community. And I think that it's really a model for what needs to happen if we're going to move forward as a collective group. One group can't be any more right than the other group. We got to work together.
I agree 100%. Just so that the audience members know, I believe this one was recorded and captured by TV One, and it'll air on TV One. So you would get an opportunity to watch this particular Hip Hop Caucus panel discussion on TV One. But BG, I do want to jump into this one because I did find this one the most entertaining of all the panel discussions. To piggyback off of what you just said, there was a huge dialogue that happened really around the tweet between Roland Martin and Lupe Fiasco, and this whole idea of voting and being active participants in the voting process, where if you can go back in GTS and Google it, but when you Google it, what you'll hear and what you'll see is a debate between Lupe and Roland, in which Roland stood on the side that Lupe should be involved in the in the voting process, and really use his platform to encourage the younger generation to participate in the voting process, whereas Lupe, he doesn't participate in the voting process and doesn't really see the need. Reverend Yearwood kind of provided his perspective on why Lupe Fiasco doesn't participate in the voting, and a lot of that is around not really having representation that looks like him, or even if it does look like him, doesn't really understand his generation and doesn't really understand and doesn't once they get elected, they don't go back and help out. So they just essentially like
get in the office and then they don't come follow through on their promises.
Right. So why should I participate?
Lupe has made it known that he ain't gonna vote. He didn't vote for Obama and he won't vote. But the interesting thing that they brought up, and this is where we have to get more politically savvy as a people, you going to get registered to vote is more than just you getting registered to participate in elections. That's the way that they get census numbers. So that's how they get an idea of how many people live in the neighborhood. And from that number, that's how it's determined what services and what resources and what money comes to those areas. So if you're not participating, you're not registered to vote, then you're not going to show up in that census data. And now you could be possibly taken away from something that your area, the place where you live, your neighborhood, should actually be given. So we have to think of our politics from a more long-term perspective versus what can we get right now. And I think that's where other communities have gotten ahead of us, is because they start piecing together plans for the long term, and we just kind of sit and get satisfied with right now. We go vote, and if our guy don't win, okay, we done with voting, we done with all that until maybe somebody hot comes around the next time. So we got to get more strategic, like we always talk about on this show.
So that actually kind of evolved into a much larger dialogue about this inside game and outside game, and how you have to have not only participation from the outside but from the inside. And it was interesting because Roland Martin essentially tried to say that in 58, Dr. King was seen as an inside guy, but then in 61 he was described by Malcolm X as an outside guy. But it just talked about how in 2 years Martin Luther King's persona had shifted from being an inside to an outside guy. And Roland Martin tried to use that to say that we, being Black America, needs people on the inside and the outside in order for us to have a successful agenda. And right now, we really need to be working towards having an inside and outside game. And Reverend Yearwood kind of said, yeah, that's true, but if you're on the inside or if you're on the outside or whatever, you have to be cautious of who's funding that cause, because if it's being funded by a particular vendor or a particular company, then that agenda changes once the economics become a part of the overall equation.
They use that as somewhat of the explanation as to why the way we look at hip-hop now and the way that some people feel about hip-hop is different than they felt about hip-hop in the 80s and the 90s, because there's a feeling that in the heyday, there were a lot more politically sound artists that were using a conscious message in their music. KRS-One, Public Enemy, and all those Dead Prez and all these different artists who in their lyrics were talking about the political climate and were motivating people to get involved and get engaged and to be on the forefront of pushing social change. And then now you've got more artists that are just making club music. The music is dumbed down and it's not putting people in the position to think about stuff that's going on around them. And a lot of that is because these artists, they're doing this to make money for them and their families and to support people. So if they run the risk, if they get too political, those companies that are backing them will back up off. They'll stop cutting those checks. And now these guys are back to not having that type of lifestyle. So for the sake of maintaining the lifestyle, they just don't really get into social issues in their music.
The last thing I was going to add to that particular session, a lot of sound bites, political booty call being one of those. And just to get some perspective, let me take a step back. So there was conversation around how hashtag Black Lives Matter hasn't really been discussed during these presidential debates. And so I'm assuming Roland Martin wants to be the moderator of one of those debates because he, quote unquote, wanted to drop a hint. Personally, I think it was I think he wants to lead the debate. That's for a separate conversation. But he basically said, hey, what if we had a debate that was sponsored by the Black Lives Matter focus and those people, and we invited candidates from the Republican as well as the Democratic parties, and maybe have a debate at FAMU in Florida or in Georgia at one of the HBCUs, and essentially ask questions around the black agenda. That sounds good, and I hope they're able to make that happen. That's one of those, for me, that's a TBD, and I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day in my own personal opinion. But, you know, not to make the point, Rep. Andrew Carson basically said, hey, we have to get on and force these politicians to not during just election time come in and participate, but also once the cameras are going and once the election is over, that they continue to look at the black agenda and make strides to hold their promises. And the word that he used was, we can't be a political booty call during the primaries and during the election and then forgot about afterwards. So I just thought that was an interesting soundbite. What's your take on that soundbite?
Political prostitutes. I guess Roland's question that he raised was a legitimate one, and like Fox has sponsored the presidential candidate debate. CNN sponsored one, and he just raised the question of if they've been on these networks and they've gone through these 2-3 hour long events, and a very small portion, if any portion, is dedicated to black folks issues, why don't black media streams and some of these sponsors come together and sponsor a debate, and we invite them and see who is really interested in talking to the black community and hearing what the black community has to say and standing on some of these issues that would benefit black folk. But to me, and this is the biggest irony that I have gotten as I thought about it flying back on the plane, and my flight home was just as crazy as Jesse Jackson skipping you in line, and we'll talk about that. But the biggest irony with this is that this is the 45th annual conference. We've been doing this for 45 years. The Congressional Black Caucus, all of those people in Congress, black folk that are in those offices putting on this conference to give information to the people. But we were in these sessions, and it was basically like all of this information was new information. To me, that suggests that have we been reinventing the wheel each of these 45 years? Because this is not nothing new about having a busload of presidential candidates that don't really talk to black issues. So why is it that this has not been proposed? Why has this not been done to where there is a debate that's centered around black establishment, black businesses, black citizens, black schools? Why is it 2015 and we have not put those things in place? That's just one of the things that stood out to me, is like, really, when we come to these things, is it really turning out to be what you've advertised it, or is it turning into something else?
Dr. Bryan spoke about that when he was talking, and he gave some really good sound bites that touched on what you were just saying in regards to not having the CBC be basically another Freaknik, is what he had to say. You know,
Freaknik with clothes on.
That was his sound bite that I'm pretty sure got a lot of applause and a lot of arousal from the audience member. It kind of reminded me of a Blake Griffin power dunk in which, you know, you go all, everybody gets excited and everybody enjoyed the dunk. But from my perspective, I'm always the guy that stays humble, and I'm the coach that's telling everybody just get back on defense. Don't sit there and celebrate the dunk, because it's 2 points. It's just as many points as a layup is, or a jump shot. So,
but you got to be fair, though. You know, he is running for Congress.
Oh, this is true, and that's a fair point that needs to be made. So, to your point, that needs to be captured, that soundbite. But let's kind of wrap this whole summary. So, we attended those 2 sessions. We also attended a reception for a relative, my cousin of mine, who I'm extremely proud of, but she was honored on the Hill for some of the outstanding work she's been doing for the past 30 years. Jackie Ellis, as she is known on the Hill, was awarded a fellowship, a leadership fellowship award for the work that she does with the interns that participate in the fellowship program for the Congressional Black Caucus. And in so many words, she is that verb in a world full of nouns.
Yeah, yes, she is.
So I thought that was great. And then we also had the opportunity to attend the Al Green dinner, which I allow BG to kind of speak to that particular event.
One time to Congressman Al Green. I don't know what district, but out of the great state of Texas.
Oh, man, it's the city of Houston.
We were in there having dinner with the whole Texas delegation, and it was a good time. It was a show no party. Some famous people, I guess you would say, came through there, and you would have thought that my co-host was one of the politicians or was up for running for office, because I think he shook every hand and kissed every baby. And we was giving thumbs up across the room. So we learned a little bit while we was in there.
I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Paulette Walker, who is the national president of Delta Sigma Theta. Of course, we were lucky to meet Martin Luther King III. We were also able to speak to Mr. Fred Taylor, who is running for mayor in Low City in Texas, sitting next to Marcus Anderson, who is the owner of the Breakfast Club in Houston, Texas.
If you ain't been, you need to go.
Also had an opportunity to meet, just spoke to a lot of friends. Wanda Adams, who was a friend of ours.
Mayor Johnny Ford.
Yeah, that's right.
From Tuskegee, Alabama.
Yeah, so.
Homeboy.
Yeah. I had a chance to shake hands and speak with him. So saw Dr. Douglas from TSU, so all of TSU faculty and staff were in attendance. So,
but where we were sitting at, though?
Well, we were sitting in the front row at the reserve table.
And we came in late. They walked us in because we was with somebody.
Thought we were going to have to just find a place in the back, but then we escorted down to the front to sit at the table with all those people, and we were shaking hands and, had an opportunity to take pictures with Miss Walker, and it was just a good time.
For me, that was a chance to see where the networking goes on. So, like, if you were somebody that had dreams of being a politician in Texas, you needed to be in there because you had representatives from the big colleges down there. You had, like we said, council members, people that are currently on the Hill, staffers, and all that type of stuff. So it was a prime opportunity for you to get your name out there and pass your business card. But I want to say thank you to Miss Jackie for making that happen for me. And them folks respect her, boy. They respect her to the utmost. She is a small lady, but she command a lot of respect, and they give it to her.
I always like to give BG and other new people that are attending for the first time their perspective, because for me, I know what to expect, and I just go in and try to look to enjoy myself, and I definitely enjoy myself, but I love to get first time attenders their perspective.
It's an experience, and I look forward to next year. I'm going to be right up in there. I'm going to be ready, though.
Well, let's jump into the actual dialogue. So, like I said, on that Saturday, I had the opportunity to attend the prayer breakfast, which was a good time, and I wish you would have stayed. I didn't know that Terry Sewell was going to be one of the co-chairs, but it would have been a good opportunity for us to kind of chat with her after the session.
She's born and raised, and her family, her mom actually was one of my teachers in high school. So, yeah, that family is really a staple in this town.
And that's an interesting story, because I actually rode on a Continental flight from D.C. to Birmingham with her and Sheila Jackson Lee when they were going to celebrate the 50th anniversary for the Birmingham bombing. And I did not even put two and two together until just this weekend that's the lady I was sitting there talking to. So it's a small world. So do you want to share with the people what happened on the flight, or is that for another time?
Yeah, I'd say what happened on the flight. It was one of the wildest flights I probably have ever had. Flying back from D.C., First connected in Detroit, getting on the plane. I'm behind this lady, little short lady. And, you know, it's always seemed to be in the summertime hotter in the plane than it is in the actual airport. So we're walking through the tarmac and we're getting on the plane and we're walking down the aisle and I just start hearing this panting, this what the hell going on with this lady in front of me?
She looks like a dog on the plane.
I looked around and she had like a small dog in this little front carry-on bag or whatnot. So like, oh, okay, it's a little Yorkie or poodle or something like that. So I'm okay. So she had me worried, but we, you know, went to my seat. And so, you know, you get on your seat, you start fiddling with your phone, checking IG, see what didn't happen and all that kind of stuff. And I'm looking down, and then all of a sudden I feel something hitting me on my leg. I'm like, what is this hitting me on my leg?
She done let the dog out.
No, man. I look to my side. It's this big ass golden retriever passing me by. Is this the zoo? And so I'm like, where this dog come from? Who got this big dog on this bus? But then I had to fall back because it was a CNI dog. Yeah, so can't really laugh at that. But and then the dog get in his seat, he started barking a little bit. I'm like, man, this gonna be a terrible flight if this dog barks the whole time. So she got him under control. So I was able to kick back a little bit. About 30 minutes, we were getting ready to land or something, and this guy that's about 3 rows in front of me, I hear this lady say behind me, is he okay? Is he okay? And I was like, I'm good. But I look up, and this big white guy is slumped over he is hanging off into the aisle, man. And so the flight attendant goes, and she kneels down in front of him, and she starts shaking him. She's like, sir. And he not responding. He not doing that. I'm like, oh, hell. Because now, that's a health professional's nightmare to be in a public place and somebody pass out or fall out because now you got to be the one. You're going to feel inclined to go do CPR. So I'm like, man, I ain't. So I'm back there kind of chilling, playing like I'm asleep, like I don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden the dude just kind of like woke up. And I'm like, I know that man wasn't sleeping that hard because that lady was really shaking him. But I guess he was so big that he really didn't feel it. So he came to, and about after all that, man, I was ready to get out the plane, but because the next thing was going to happen, we were going to catch some turbulence or something, and it was just going to be all over for me. So one of the most eventful flights that I can say I've ever had in life.
Well, that sounds like a mutual friend of ours, normal flying pattern. So he continues to have those type of experiences. That's hilarious.
And get me off this plane, man.
Get me off their plane. So let's go back to the question that you asked earlier. You know, I've attended those sessions. I live in this city, so I've had the opportunity to have experience or been in rooms with a number of the people that are on these panels. And so my thoughts and my whole perspective around this particular event is, what is the motive? What is the itinerary? What is the agenda? And I say those things really because I want to say, are the individual who's on those panels are authentic? Who on those panels are looking for exposure, dropping particular sound bites or giving off that persona that they are, you know, bigger than life, or who at these sessions you know, who really has the power? You know, we can drop these hints, and I kind of question how much power. I think certain individuals may have a lot of influence and power in within the black community, but how are they seen outside of the black community? So much so that they can actually have influence in the decisions that are being made at a CNN or Fox News and that kind of thing. So I just said a lot because when I attend those sessions, I really leave those sessions feeling like it's a bunch of people preaching to the choir. Even in the hip hop caucus, before it even got started, you know, you and I were kind of just talking, and I made the comment that they really need to have workshops for these things. If you have these high profile people in attendance, they have all of this knowledge and experience, for me, what I would want is more of a workshop setting where we have these individuals actually showing and discussing how they were able to either get to where they are or develop the skill set that empowered them to be influential. These panel discussions are good and they're great, but rather than having those at the CBC session, those can be aired on TV. A lot of those conversations we see on TV anyway. Or if they're not on TV, let's figure out a way to have those online or on TV and let other people see the panel discussions. But if I'm attending that conference, I need to leave that conference with a tangible set of skills that I can take back as an ambassador to the people that are in my community or the people that are in my immediate circle, that I can share what I learned with them, and we can continue to grow on that. You even made a comment that we've been doing this for 45 years, and is this where we should be setting aside our agenda? And from that, presenting that to the political parties and say, hey, this is our agenda. How many of these are you going to actually commit to? And if you're not going to commit to them, then we need to find a candidate that's going to commit to these strategies.
And as a first-time goer, I don't know all the ins and outs, but it looks like a perfect opportunity to be able to do that, like to get consensus on what are the things that we as Black Americans should be putting as high priority for any political candidate, whether it be locally or on a state level, that we're going to hold them to. If we're coming together and we have the voice of our people that are on the Hill talking to us, letting us know about it, and we're all assembled there, there should be no question about us in Alabama focusing on different stuff than a person in California. There should be some conformity in what we're going for. But what alarms me is that these are the type of things that in a way reinforce this whole thing about information and privilege being only allowed or afforded to a certain group of people. Elite people are the only people that can get a certain type of information or that can be in a certain position to make decisions. And that's not even what this thing should be about. Like politics, I guess in its fundamental state was about the people. We as a people, we come together, we know what we want, and then we put somebody in a position and they do what we tell them to do. But now the thing has flipped around as to where the politicians have all the information and then we just trust what it is that they say and we go along with it and we just vote because we like the guy, we like how he talks, we like how he looks. And it's very unfortunate that we end up suffering from that. Of people that have been through so much, that go through so much on a day-to-day basis, that we can't even use politics and having politicians that come from our neighborhoods going up there and doing things that would benefit us. And what I'm afraid of is these type of moments are just an opportunity for the photo ops, the networking for those individuals that are already in that establishment, and an opportunity for them to continually keep the important information away from the people that need it the most. And we can't ever win with that. Because on one end, you say, I want to support this guy. He looks like me. He understands what I've come from, so I will put him in office. But once he gets in office, he has his own personal agenda. And we've got so many career politicians, and I was talking to my dad about it. It's like, in your first mind, you think a career politician is a person that has just been in the office for a long period of time. But a real career politician is a person that does politics for a career. So they're going to do everything that they can to try to maintain that position and that livelihood. And we can't allow that. And so what I would hope, from something like this is that this would really be an opportunity for transparency and, like you say, education for us on the ground level to really impact change where we are.
Oh, it's definitely a lot of photo op for those that are participating on these panels. I think they take advantage of that. because it adds to their resume. Also, I question the influence. Again, I would question the influence that some of these folks on these panels actually have, because they probably they have influence within this immediate circle of black folk, but can they how much access do they really have to President Obama? How much access do they really have such that they are influencing at a macro and at a level outside of peer circle? I think we have a lot of sound bites and everything sounds good, and that's the reason why I say TBD, to be determined, whether or not they're even going to have this political debate. I feel like that's one thing that Tavis Smiley has been upset at the president in 2008 when he invited the president and Hillary Clinton to the State of Black America's sessions that he used to have. Hillary came, but President Obama didn't come. He had a previous event that was scheduled, and I think that ego got in the way of Mr. Smiley, and he felt like as though the president wasn't respecting him, and he wasn't respected. And because of that, I think that he, I believe, I'm pretty sure he would disagree, but I believe that had a lot of why he's never been supported for the president. Now, I say all that to say that participate on these panels and have these conversations. I'm not sure how much influence they have outside of our community, or so much so that they can get to the president and talk to him and have actual influence. So I feel like, to your point, there's a lot of photo op, but there are also a lot of this information and these conversations, or these is not being passed to folks that can attend and may benefit from the conversations and the dialogues that are being had, and hence the reason why you and I are able to kind of fill that void for now, and kind of share what we learned and what we saw during those sessions, and be that underground voice for those that aren't in that circle.
Yeah, and it's like going into this room, to this secret society, and righteously, with that particular event, there was a registration, and I don't think there was anything that you could register for, whether you be a student or an older person or whatever, that the fee was under $100. So that right there is going to possibly keep a lot of average, regular, everyday people from going. But we were privileged enough, because of this platform, to come in and report as members of the media. And for me, it really did, like you say, emphasize our job in this, because there is opportunity. Like, there was opportunity to gather information, to learn some things that we didn't know. And so we can come back and do a show like today, report on it, and put some of the questions that were raised on our listeners and our followers' minds. But the take-home point for me of all of this, though, anything from a political or a social change stance starts at home. It starts locally. And it was amazing to me how much interaction local politicians can actually have with those congressmen, and even the president for that matter. Because you go to a little dinner like that, and you got all these individuals in there, and you have direct access to a congressman. Like, if we had an issue in Houston, we could have actually talked to Congressman Al Green right there on the spot. Now, whether he heard us would be different, but we had an opportunity. So, mayors and city councilmen and all these people have the same opportunity to talk for your community. So hence why it is important to take care of your local politics, to really pay attention to who you're putting in, and even considering putting yourself in the hat. Based off of what we saw, like, you could be that person to get in that room and really talk for some of the things that your neighborhood actually needs, and get it done.
Like I said, I've had the opportunity to experience these things, so I kind of get a sense of how it goes and what I should anticipate and accept, but I always leave that thing kind of just wondering what was the take, what did we actually learn from this? And I feel like we really need to start figuring out how to do more practical and tangible workshops and that kind of thing. I mean, it's good to have all these people in the same room. To BG's point, you have that access to those folks, and it's really a click away, or just walk up to them and just say, hey, you got a minute to talk. It's like, it's that easy. But you know, when I was walking in the exhibit hall after the breakfast, the Honorable James Clyburn was right there, you know, and I basically was standing toe to toe and could talk to him just like when Jesse Jackson skipped me. He was right there. And if you have something that you actually want to say, then you have that opportunity. So I think it's good to attend those things, but it's almost like we're playing that inside-outside game, BG, that they spoke about with our own community, where we're the inside and the outside game.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to be. If we find information, we're going to try to break it down and translate it so that more people can understand it and run with it. And if we got to do that, on the inside, we're going to be right here doing it on the inside. And definitely if it's on the outside, we're going to bring it in. So we the underground, and that's what it's going to be from this point moving forward. And I love it.
Oh, yeah, and that's actually how I felt. You know, I kind of at times felt like an outsider at a
totally
at a CBC event. I felt like I was an outsider in an event where I should be an insider, and I think that when you have that feeling, that personal feeling, which I'm sure the alternative that they would, or the debate to that would be, well, you need to get more involved. I would address that by saying I am involved, and I have personal examples of individuals that I can have speak on my behalf or our behalf.
Like I said, I enjoy DC. It's always good to get down there and to take in that history and to intermingle with the people. We had a good time. We did get an opportunity to do a little party, and the parties definitely go down, but we ain't going to talk about that on the air. But we had a great time, and we're looking forward to doing that again. But we got a lot of stuff that's going to be popping off as we take this podcast to the next level. So I just want everybody to keep rocking with us, keep tuning in, subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and tell friends about us. And then if you got any ideas, you know, drop us a line at any time, because we're here for the people and we're here for the advancement of the community and getting to this point where we ultimately know we can be. We just got to start putting in their work.
Let the people know how they can reach.
Check us out, freelunchpodcast.com for podcasts and blogs. Also hit us up on Twitter. Let us know what you think about this, Free Lunch Pod C. And on Instagram, we got pictures and videos there too, Free Lunch Podcast. And be sure, if you're just in your office, you can't get on iTunes, you can't get on SoundCloud, you can get us on YouTube, Free Lunch TV.
And also, just want to make certain that we do acknowledge and want to continue to encourage you all to go out and support the Thomas Allen Collection. Over the weekend, I did rock my Thomas Allen Collection ties. I rocked it on Friday at the two panel discussions, the Black Voices in Media and the Hip Hop Caucus, as well as at the dinners that we spoke about. Had my Thomas Allen Collection tie on. Also, my Thomas Allen Collection tie at the prep breakfast. I'm pretty sure when I shook Mr. Jackson's hand, he was checking out my tie because that's how close we were, and I'm pretty sure he admired that tie. So, Mr. Jackson, we'll make certain that next time we in contact, I'll make certain to give you Mr. Thomas Allen Collection's information so that you can purchase one of those very same ties as you bypass all of the other bystanders in the line to get into the prep breakfast.
I bet there was some folk cussing Jesse Jackson out when he was skipping them in that line. They already mad at Jesse.
I couldn't say nothing. What am I gonna say to a guy that was on the front lines of the civil rights movement, apparently, and he ran for president? What can I say to him? You can't skip. Oh, I should have. No, I can't say that. I was about to
get your hands off.
Get your hand out my pocket or something. Man, let me get out.
Make a scene. That one was for anybody that didn't think my boy was wearing these Thomas Allen ties. That one was for you, all the way in D.C. So, G, don't try to check my boy no more. We out of here, man. Free Lunch Podcast.
Let's go, let's get it. Let's go, let it go now. Let it go, go, let's go, let's get it. Let's go, let it go now. Let it go, let's get it. Super mathematics, not a problem, no not for that old block. So sign away for that bull rock. Super small, handcrafted art designs, no they know not. Flow tougher than tough town. Blacker than the ground, they drum line. No overdose, I'm overwoke. I'll be away from crunch time. Be everywhere like sunshine. I lead right close. Punchline, I beat the track. I eat the track. Brown paper breakfast. Lunchtime, dinner date, dessert tray. Ramadan, flow hungry. You see the sign between the line. It's G's only. No dummies, I flow lovely. They go nutty. They catch a feeling. These hoes touch. Yeah, I tell that jump off, no bunches. No awakening. Home study, but you're so pretty. Best of shows, sometimes the best way to touch them. Stand and go. Let's go, let's go, let's get it. Let's go, let it go now. Let it go, let's get it. Get it, got 'em. Let's go, let's go, let's get it. Let's go, let it go now. Let it go, let's get it. Mathematics, before I chose the path chose me. This is a Lord's plan, divine decree.